welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and this is 5 unique builds for 5 commanders, continuing on my series of just taking sometimes certain commanders, but also sometimes certain ideas and finding commanders that fit those ideas. I'm doing a combination of things here. And in particular, with the first one, I'm actually going to be revisiting my 10 deck ideas video, which I just did. And I'm going to start out there with the Super Voltron idea. And again, in this particular situation, I'm finding commanders that fit that theme. So what I talked about there was, okay, I'm going to put a lot of these, essentially I don't use aura and equipment, which you typically would do in a Voltron theme, but I think there's enough options that you don't need to do that. So for example, Flowering of the White Tree is the one that I used it as an example, where that's going to give my commander +2/+1 and ward 1 for only 2 mana. And the advantage there is if my commander dies to a board wipe, as soon as I play it again, it gets that effect, right? Some effect that my commander just gets it as soon as it hits the battle. That's another advantage to that strategy, is I don't have to worry about putting an aura on it, equipping that Lightning Greaves. I don't have to worry about all that. Everything's turned on. Bastion Protector, right? It's turned on immediately as soon as my commander hits the battlefield. Guardian Augmenter, turned on immediately. Steely Resolve, a card that I've mentioned a few times on my channel that I'm a big fan of. Again, that's another reason why I like that card, where it just turns on automatically. Now, that doesn't work great in the Voltron strategy or in a lot of strategies because it gives Shroud, but here we don't care because we're not targeting our commander anyway, right? And a few people mentioned some commanders in that comments of that video that fit perfectly in this strategy. So for example, Progenitus, right? I mean, that's an obvious one. If you got a Progenitus deck out there, you're probably already doing that. Because Progenitus has protection from everything, you actually can't equip anything onto it. And I don't know if anyone's doing it. If you are, you're doing it wrong, okay? That doesn't work. You cannot equip or put any auras on your commander. And in particular, something like Flowering of the White Tree is just perfect there because it sits on the battlefield. You need the 2 white anyway to cast your commander. So it sits on the battlefield, and as soon as your commander comes down, it now is a 12/11. So now it's a 2-hit kill, right? So those effects actually work great there. People had mentioned Haktos the Unscarred is also a great fit there because, again, it does the protection thing. It enters the battlefield and you choose 2, 3, or 4 at random, and it has protection from every converted mana cost except that number. So if I have a Lightning Greaves and I pick a 3, I can't put a Lightning Greaves on my commander because it has protection for mana value 2, right? So this strategy, again, works really, really well. That's where you want Bastion Protector and those kinds of effects work extra good because you likely can't enchant or equip your commander. I had some guy mention he's going to do this idea with a Snapdax deck. Again, this is another idea that works really, really well, where I can mutate my Snapdax onto the Bastion Protector. That is my commander still. Talked about this with the commander damage video a little, where the identity is that actual card. So that actual card is now going to have Indestructible, and it's going to get +2/+2. He said Vexilus Praetor, even better. Now my commander, I'm essentially mutating onto my Vexilus Praetor, and my commander now is essentially becoming a Progenitus, right? There's another commander that works with the Super Voltron strategy, and I just talked about Sovereign Okenek Awa in a video, the spoiler video about Lost Caverns of Ixalan, where I was not super thrilled about that commander, but the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, actually, there's quite a few things you can do here, and in fact, the Super Voltron strategy works great. Again, I have the Bastion Protector, all those anthem type of effects that will immediately bump my commander's power as soon as it hits the battlefield, so that as soon as it attacks, you're piling the counters on it. So that's another commander that works in that strategy. So here in this case, I guess I'm mentioning a bunch of commanders that work specifically with the strategy that I was talking about there. Zedru the Great-Hearted, good old-fashioned commander that's been around in the commander format for a long, long time. Really great design. Again, those original commanders that they made in like Commander, 2011, 2013, those were the first ones. There was a lot of really, really great mainstays there and commanders that we keep coming back to and we keep revisiting, and they're still popular after all these years because they were such great designs, and Zedru the Great-Hearted is one of them. And I came up with an interesting idea for it that I don't know if anyone's ever done before, but I think it's an interesting one. Again, especially with an old commander like this that's been around for a long, long time, coming up with these new interesting ways to revisit these commanders could be, because maybe you have a Zedru deck that you've had for a long time and you're just doing what everyone else is doing and you're just like a little bored with it and you love Zedru, you still want that deck, so you want something a little different. A lot of different things you can do because you are giving your opponents, you're donating stuff, right? This is a donate commander. I'm giving my opponent my stuff, and then I'm also getting an advantage off of it. And you can donate the nasty stuff. A lot of people do that. But what else people do with this deck is the universal effects, where I have like a Howling Mine, for example. And a Howling Mine is everyone draws a card. It doesn't matter who controls it. So I can donate my Howling Mine to my opponent, and now I've done what I want to do with my Zedru, and that universal effect still affects everybody, right? A Rest in Peace, same thing. If you don't want to do the huggy stuff, I play a Rest in Peace because it's just a great graveyard hate card. Probably not doing graveyard stuff with my Zedru deck, so I play that Rest in Peace, and it is hosing every graveyard strategy. And then I can very easily donate that to my opponent, and the effect I'm getting off of it is still working. It's still hating everyone's graveyard. So effects like that work really good, where it doesn't matter who controls it. And this theme works with curses. And that is the strategy that I'm talking about here. Don't know if anyone's ever done that, but a curse deck with Zedru, and I realize there are actual curse commanders. There is a Grixis one. A lot of people do it in Mardu as well with Gen. If you want to make a Jeskai Curses deck, or you just, again, have a Zedru deck and you want a new interesting thing to do, Curses will work with Zedru. And the reason why is because I have a curse. Let's take Curse of Opulence, one that has been in the format for a long, long time, still gets played quite a bit, right? So 1 red mana or a curse, enchant player. So this comes down and I enchant, whatever player I want to enchant it with. Let's say it's a guy who I want to be attacking, because this is obviously going to be an attack thing. Gives you those gold tokens before they had treasure tokens. So this comes down, I enchant that guy, right? Now, the way curses work is it's just like an aura, okay? If I cast an aura on a creature and then the control of that aura changes, it's still enchanted onto that creature. If the control of that creature changes, the aura still is attached to that creature. The same is true for curses, right? If I cast my Curse of Opulence and it is enchanting, because I can enchant myself with this if I want to, right? I can cast this. It doesn't say enchant opponent. If you had something that said enchant opponent, you would just have to give it to a different opponent, not the guy that's actually enchanted by it, because then it wouldn't work. But here, this just says enchant the player. So I can actually enchant myself with this, or I enchant my opponent with it, and then I donate to that opponent, or any opponent. Doesn't matter. It is still attached to that person. So any curse I cast, you can do this with all of them. I cast the curse, attaching it to whatever player I want to attach it to, and then I just donate it to whoever. Just give it to some guy. It doesn't matter who has it. It is still attached to the player that it was originally attached to, right? You're just sliding it across the table. It's not ETBing again. It's not leaving the battlefield and then coming back into play. You're just sliding it across the table. So it is still attached to that player that you originally enchanted with. That's why curses work really good with Zedru. Don't know if anyone's ever done that before. I think it's a pretty neat idea. All right, moving on to Angie Falcon Wrath, and I have a little bit of overlap here. There's a few different things I'm going to talk about, and I had a short that I did a little while back, a really neat combo that I came up with Falcon Wrath Gorger, which gives all of your vampire cards Madness, and Homing Sliver, which gives all your sliver cycling, and then I Maskwood Nexus, and I turn all my creatures into both vampires and slivers. And of course, sliver cycling is discarding. So when I discard my creatures to go get something else, the madness will trigger, because of course they all have madness, and then I will cast them. Really neat combo. And I actually, again, talked about it in my 10 deck guys video. This is sort of like the 10 deck ideas version of 5 builds, because I'm revisiting that a lot here. I revisited that idea, actually made a Val deck where I'm doing that. I actually made that deck and I'm play testing it, and I might actually have an Is It deck finally after all these years. So why am I talking about that here? Well, because of course, Angie's doing madness, and you don't have to do this here. I'm using Angie as the commander example here because it's doing the madness thing. Any discard theme here will work, or any madness theme here will work. But what I discovered there that I didn't even realize before, and I think a lot of people don't as well, is that madness casts from exile. And that's essentially the theme here. There's a little bit of overlap, but we've seen a ton of commanders come out recently that are doing the either cast from exile. Again, Faldorn, which is another one that I talked about on my channel in the past with other, cast from exile stuff like Fortell and, Suspend. There's a whole bunch of overlap here. But specifically, I'm looking at the Madness theme and casting from exile. So you can either do Angie Falcon Wrath because Angie Falcon Wrath is doing the Madness thing already, or you can do a commander that is casting from exile, triggers, or doing a commander that is casting from anywhere other than your hand. And we just got a bunch of those from Doctor Who. You're a big Doctor Who fan, and any of those commanders that are doing that you are interested in, I'm giving you an idea for that, and that is the Madness. You can do Madness there, because Madness is casting anywhere other than your hand. It's also casting from exile, so it fits both of those. So what you would have to do here, again, you can either pick a commander that's already doing the discard theme. I'm talking about a lot here, but you're doing the Angie thing, or you're doing, like, say I have a Bralin deck that does a lot of discard. I have some Madness in that deck because I'm discarding a lot, right? What you can do is now throw a bunch of cards in the deck. So I'm already doing that because I'm casting from exile, or because I'm casting from anywhere other than my hand. I can now start throwing in all those cards, and red's a great color here for this because there is a ton in red. There's also quite a bit in blue. So blue and red are really great colors here. I'm casting stuff from exile, or I'm casting stuff from anywhere other than my hand. All those cards, I'm putting a bunch on the screen. And again, we just got a bunch from Doctor Who that will work here because I'm doing the Madness theme. Again, you're doing a whole bunch of overlap. I'm doing discard, I'm doing Madness, I'm doing cast from exile. All of that, it all works. So if I'm already doing that, I'm just throwing all those cards in my deck that care about casting from exile or care about casting for anywhere other than my hand. I've repeated myself a lot there, but I'm just trying to get the point across as clearly as I can so you guys know what I'm talking about. All right, let's move on. Greasefang Okiba Boss. And this is a situation where, again, maybe you're just a little bored of doing the same old thing with this deck. I like this commander. I have a patron, and this is where I kind of came up with the idea, who did this recently. They just really like this commander. And, I would imagine a lot of Greasefang decks are all doing the same thing. And rightfully so, because of course you want to do vehicles, and you would do that here. What Greasefang is doing well, I mean, obviously it's returning vehicles to play, but what else it's doing well is it's actually returning stuff to your hand really, really well. Like at the beginning of combat of your turn, return a vehicle card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and then it goes back to your hand. And of course, you probably could just sacrifice, like at high market, I sacrifice that vehicle after I make it a creature, of course. It goes back to my graveyard. You can do that. You can also do the discard thing. The discard thing works really, really well. And I was thinking more about that. And again, I've talked about the Damia deck that I had a long, long time ago that wasn't super fun to play against, but I just made everyone discard and my hand refilled. You can do that here as well. And again, there's a little bit of overlap here because, of course, the Madness, the discard, we're doing a little bit of overlap here. But what Greasefang does is it very easily, because it's constantly returning something essentially to your hand. I mean, you're getting extra value here because the vehicle is going from your graveyard to the battlefield. You can then attack with it. Then it returns to your hand. And I can even put a Smuggler's Copter in here where that's doing the discard theme too. So, and I don't know, there might be a couple vehicles that are doing the discard theme where when it attacks, you discard. I don't know. There's probably a few, but we're in essentially a discard theme, a Greasefang discard theme. And of course, black does that the best. Again, I would do what I did in my Damia deck where I have like a Necrogen Mists where, okay, I want to discard anyway, right? That's the theme here. The theme here is I want to discard anyway. And again, a lot of people might be doing this with their Greasefang deck. I already want to discard. So why not put those universal effects rather than just I put a looting effect where I can chuck stuff in my graveyard. Now I'm giving myself more advantage. I already want to discard. So I'm perfectly okay with the Necrogen Mists because I want to discard. I return something to play with my Greasefang. I bring it back to my hand so that I always have something that I want to be discarding, right? It's filling two scenarios here where I want to discard anyway because I want to get that vehicle back, but also my commander is refilling my hand constantly so that I have a discard for that Necrogen Mist or whatever all those Cunning Lethomancer, right? There's lots of effects like this in black that you could be using. And then on top of that, because I'm doing that a lot, now I can throw the Archfiend of Ifnir in the deck, right? Now I can throw the Bone Miser in the deck. Now I'm getting added value, right? So again, I think this is probably something that likely a lot of people are doing in their Greasefang decks already, maybe. But I'm just leaning more heavily into that theme where now, like, how many people have an Archfiend of Ifnir or a Bone Miser in their Greasefang deck? I don't know. Say there's probably two routes you can go here is I return it to play, then I sacrifice it, or I return it to play, it goes to my hand, then I discard it. If you're doing the second one, just lean more heavily into the discard theme. Or again, maybe you're already doing a Greasefang deck and it's a little boring. You're just doing the same old thing every time. Here's a different way to go with it, where I'm not doing 100% a vehicle deck. I am doing a vehicle deck, but more I'm playing into the fact that my commander returns a card from my graveyard to the battlefield and then into my hand. So essentially, I'm just returning a card to my hand every turn, right? Anything that says whenever you discard an artifact might also be a great fit here as well, right? Whenever an artifact leaves your graveyard, any of those cards out there might also be a great fit, right? Greasefang discard theme is essentially the scenario here. All right, lastly today, let's talk about Imard the Storm Cleaver, which of course was a Street Fighter card. It was Guile. They made a Magic version, whatever you want to call it. For those who aren't aware, that's what this card is, Imard the Storm Cleaver. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that have never even seen this card before. 1 white, blue, and a red human soldier 4/4. When Imard the Storm Cleaver enters the battlefield or attacks, put a charge counter on it or remove one from it. When you remove a counter this way, choose one. Deals 4 damage to any target, or it gains lifelink and indestructible into turn. Not bad. I like the fact that you have those different abilities. And of course, because your commander's throwing damage around, there's a lot you can do there. Your commander can give itself lifelink or indestructible, a lot you can do there. I can throw a Chandrad's Incinerator in here because now I can go face to my opponent and kill one of their creatures as well. I can throw Well Lost Dreams in here, and if I have that Well Lost Dreams in play, now I give my commander lifelink. I can draw a bunch of cards. Maybe I got a board wipe in my hand. Now I give my commander the indestructible, cast a board wipe on the second main phase. Right? There's a lot of neat things you can do here. Why am I talking about this guy? Because again, going back to that 10 cards video, I talked about charge counter, the charge counter theme, and wouldn't you know it, this is actually the only commander that is dealing with charge counters. Now, of course, the proliferate theme works. There's lots of commanders that do that, as I mentioned in that video. But after I did that video, I thought, I wonder if there's any commanders that are actually dealing with charge counters. This is the only one. This is a commander that is actually putting charge counters on itself. So again, we're revisiting that theme. If you want to do the charge counter theme in a little bit of a more unique way, I would say, than just doing proliferate, this is a neat way to do it because you have a commander that is indeed putting charge counters on yourself, and it's extra good here. And I imagine a lot of people who are playing this commander are probably proliferating already. You want to be removing the counter. You don't want to be adding counters because when you add counters, it doesn't do anything. So basically, I want to get to a point where I'm attacking with my commander every turn and I get to use that ability, either deal damage or the lifelink and indestructible thing. Now, one of the issues here that people will point out is a lot of the charge counter stuff deals with artifacts, right? So if I have, say, a core tapper, that's putting charge counters on artifacts and my commander's not an artifact. But of course, that is the, again, I got a combination of janky ideas here where we're doing the charge counter theme with Imard, but we're also doing I turn my stuff into artifacts, right? So I got a liquid metal torque. Now I can turn my commander into an artifact, right? So I can put the charge counter on my Imard, and then now I can core tapper, put another charge counter on it, right? So I never have to worry about putting charge counters on my commander. It is a way more jankier way to do it. A lot of people will say, oh, I just proliferate. It's way easier. I'm coming up with unique ideas here, guys. That's the whole idea. And also, it's a charge counter deck. I'm not just putting, right? So I have a whole bunch of other stuff in the deck. I got a Dark Steel Reactor in the deck. So now I can put charge counters on that as well, right? So it's a charge counter deck, but also I'm adding to the jankiness of the theme here where I'm also turning my commander into an artifact so that I can put charge counters on it. And also, there's more, there's more advantage to that theme. That seems pretty janky. I turn my commander into an artifact so I can put charge counters on it, but there's more you can do there. Since I'm already doing that, right, I have that liquid metal torque, and I also have a Vandal Blast, right? So now I turn my opponent's Elishnorn into an artifact. So there's more you can do there. I talked about Xenic Poltergeist in a video recently about important cards because they do certain things, and that card, because it turns non-creature artifacts into artifact creatures, now your creature removal works there. Now, of course, white has no problem dealing with, that kind of stuff, or red actually deals with it as well. Removal is not an issue here, but now I can load up on my artifact removal because all my stuff that turns creatures into artifacts, now I can use that as well, right? So there is other advantages here to doing this strategy. I'm doing the charge counter theme as well, but also now I can do the I turn stuff into artifacts. Yes, I want to turn my commander into an artifact. Maybe I have other creatures that I can turn into artifacts. Again, I'm thinking of that, what is that one guy, Cirque Spell Slinger or something? There's that creature that also puts charge counters on itself that now I can turn that guy into an artifact, right? So I can put other creatures in the deck that I can turn into artifacts and pile counters on them as well, because there is some advantage to doing that. So you can do that as well, but you can also do the, I just turn my opponent's Elish Norn into an artifact so that I can Vandal Blast and kill it, right? There is that advantage as well. So there's a lot of neat things that you can do here, a lot of neat interactions. That is it this time. I will point out, though, that as usual, I am always making these decks. I'm already, in fact, working on a couple of the ones I just talked about. I made the Verak Landfall deck from the last 5 builds video. I believe I talked about it there. So if you were interested in that deck at all, the deck list for the Verak Landfall deck is in the description below. Give it a click if you're interested. That is it for today, though, and thanks for tuning in.